Hello from Guanacaste.
Hello from Hollow Bay.
Hello from Glacier Bay.
This is a tool that John and I have co-developed over the past several years. And the reason for doing this is because climate change was identified by various World Heritage related bodies, advisory bodies, UNESCO itself as well, as being an issue. However, there didn't seem to be a clear tool available to undertake an analysis and be able to understand those impacts. So John and I took this as a challenge to develop a tool that could rapidly, keyword, assess vulnerability, consistently applicable, because that's important. We need to have a consistent method. It needs to be able to apply to all types of World Heritage properties. It has to be systematic, but not too complex. It definitely needs to be proactive. We want to understand the vulnerability now rather than waiting for the impacts to occur, although in some cases impacts are definitely occurring already. And so we began with this challenge by borrowing from somewhere else. The initial framework was built from the existing IPCC vulnerability approach. And this was used in the 3rd and 4th assessment reports. You can see the terms of exposure, sensitivity, adaptive capacity. Those are the 3 things to assess, which give as an interim output potential impact, and as a final output the vulnerability. That's the standard 5-box framework. We modified this, changing the vulnerability to specifically point to the vulnerability of OUV. And this was an important piece for us because that is the foundational part for World Heritage. Some colleagues and collaborators had looked at the ideas of social and ecological vulnerability by taking this same framework and repeating it down the bottom here to assess a community vulnerability, where the vulnerability of the World Heritage property becomes the exposure term for the community impacts. The whole story of this framework is what we call the CVI. So importantly, we determined the key World Heritage values. Well, the great news is for World Heritage, these are contained within the Statement of Outstanding Universal Value. To give you an example of this from one of our theme properties today, for our Shark Bay analysis, we looked at these 13 key values derived from the Statement of OUV. With the values identified, we now look to climate change and the climate stressors that are impacting the properties. What we do with this list is evaluate the climate stressors relevant and potentially impacting the key values, and through that process, select which are the most relevant climate stressors for the individual properties. For the Shark Bay application, the temperature trend, the long-term changes, and extreme temperature events, short-term bursts, were identified, as was storm intensity and frequency. In the heart of Neolithic Orkney in the north of Scotland, a cultural property, these were the 3 identified key climate stressors based on an analysis using the property values: precipitation trends, storm intensity and frequency, sea level rise. For the Wadensee application, it was again the 2 temperature stressors, the long-term and short-term, as well as sea level rise. This framework, as we began with the different risk matrix approaches coming through to assess our OUV vulnerability and our community vulnerability.
Now, just a brief little bit of geography, because sometimes we feel like we're a long way from the rest of the world. So Western Australia here, Shark Bay is an embayment. Shark Bay is big. It's 22,000 square kilometres. The indigenous name is Gathagudu, which means two bays in the indigenous language. Most of the property is marine, around 70% is marine waters. It's one of the few properties that's listed for the 4 natural criteria that you can see there. What CVI did for us certainly was bring some ownership and consensus on the key climate change risks. That was particularly useful, I think, because prior to that, there were individual views and particular aspects that were being focused on. It also collated the projections and encouraged discussion, which was great. And as I said, I think importantly provides a sort of integrated approach to climate change. It's focused on the OUVs and considers science, but it also considers community aspects as well. So for us, it certainly helped to highlight the knowledge that we had and the things that we didn't know or don't measure. So that was a useful aspect as well. I guess seeing it in perspective, we see it as a key step in a process to enable effectively integrated adaptation planning. So this last slide is really a little summary. We begun at the bottom, if you like, with our CVI outcomes and report, and that's available online. We used the CVI methodology. Where we're trying to get to is right up the top with implementation of actions that put us in a good position to maintain property values and adapt to changes. The steps in between, we do have to address the knowledge gaps. We need to consider what our adaptation strategy is and undertake the planning process. So I guess the boxes on the left-hand side there will be other World Heritage sites going through this and other adaptation plans, and they'll be really useful reference points for us. So that's all I had. Hopefully that gives you a reasonable overview of the application at Shark Bay.
This is the property, the Wadden World Heritage. It's the largest unbroken system of intertidal sand and mudflats in the world, with natural processes undisturbed through most of the area. It's inscribed under criteria 8, 9, and 10. So the CVI for us is a joint tool for serial and transnational World Heritage property like the Wadden Sea. It is a tool for enhanced involvement of scientists and site managers, and helps us to show and to work on how World Heritage at OUV can be really applied in research and protection and management. It helps, and this has been said by our colleagues just before us, communication of an expert opinion to the public is an important issue in this setting. And hopefully the Climate Vulnerability Index will help us for priority setting in protection and management. And just to let you know that we are currently working on a single integrated management plan for the trilateral property to bring our multi-level management together. And the CVI will play a role in that when it comes to assessment. And for the first time, a common tool was jointly applied for such a complex and dynamic system transnationally. And the different experts from different disciplines and site managers came together and applied the system. And thanks to this very transparent methodology based on OUV key values and attributes, it really helped us also to enhance awareness on OUV, the values, and how to integrate these into science monitoring, assessment, and the methodology. I think this is very important because although we have really good scientists and really good managers making the link to OUV and what does that mean in such a complex topic as climate change, is not always as obvious as one might assume.
Okay, so what's shown us is some different ways of applying the CVI. On the left-hand side, you'll see the yellow CVI workshop. That's effectively what Scott's talked about and what we've done in Shark Bay and in Wadden Sea. On the right-hand side, in the orange, you'll see what we call a snapshot, a much quicker application of the CVI. And this is being now done in more and more sites, particularly as we're doing it online and remotely. It's a rapid assessment. As I said, it is systematic, transparent, but I think the most important one is repeatable. You can apply this same framework each time you do it, and because it is rapid, you can do it, say, every 4 or 5 years in conjunction with your management planning process. It's scientifically rigorous. It'll stand up to that. It'll help committees and your advisory committees understand climate change. It's going to help you do better reporting in a consistent way. It's going to provide a really good tool to engage with your public groups and keep going. The other thing we're now finding is that this tool is applicable beyond World Heritage, and we're getting more and more sites getting interested. The other thing is, because there's so many World Heritage sites, we're looking at a thematic approach. If you're interested, we have an update on our website. These come out about 3 times a year. And just to finish off, I think the last slide shows our CVI Heritage website, where, as you heard from Scott, you can access all those reports that he showed and those updates. And there are our emails at the very bottom with the contact if you want to get in contact with us.